All right. Wow. Just finished watching Tuesday Night Football, Bills Titans. That game did not go how I expected to go. So they just finished up 16-42. The Titans trounced the Bills. Not quite what I was expecting. The Josh Allen offense, the Josh Allen show, the interceptions kind of sort of caught up with him. The first interception was tipped by his wide receiver, not entirely his fault. Second interception that came later in the game when they were trying to get back into it, uh, that one was pretty bad. Pretty much on him. Just didn't see a guy and threw it kind of right into the hands of a Titans defender. But I don't know if this story was so much about the Bills. They did kind of shoot themselves in the foot continually on offense, especially throughout that game. On defense, didn't seem like they could do anything to stop the Titans. But I just think that's probably more about the Titans. The Titans coming off their extended, unexpected bye. Credit to Vrabel for keeping his team in check, keeping them focused. I kind of knew he was the kind of coach that would be able to do that. I kind of always liked him. Kind of comes under what he was, the linebacker and then a defensive coach for Bill Belichick. I don't know. Just seems like a fun guy. He's kind of hard nosed football guy, but also I don't know, just kind of a funny guy in interviews and stuff. So I'm probably biased, but I think he's a pretty good coach. And what can I say? The Titans played much cleaner football coming off this break. Seems like he got his defense in order. They hadn't really been playing as well as I had expected them up to this week. This week it sure seemed like they played a lot better. Jadeveon Clowney, who was a recent free agent signing, maybe they've kind of found better uses for him, or he's feeling more comfortable in the system. I'm not sure. It's one game, so who knows? But no other way to say it, man. That was a very solid performance that they put up tonight. Hats off to him. Not what I expected to happen, but you win some, you lose some. Jumping into week 6, I'm gonna try to do this in one video because I just didn't have that many avoids. 4 teams on bye this week: the Chargers, Raiders, Saints, and Seahawks all on bye. Fingers crossed, more teams don't get added to that list. But let's get started with my tier 1 bets. First thing I got is Lions at Jaguars. For some reason, the Lions are minus 3.5 point favorites in this one, and maybe that's fair, but that sure seems like not enough points considering how bad the Jaguars have been. Um, I thought it was kind of too many points last week when they were +6 underdogs against the Texans, and the Texans had not been a good team, just fired their head coach, and the Texans went out and crushed them. In the box score, it was a closer game than I think the score reflects. But either way, Texans had no problem covering the 6, and I think the Lions are as good or probably a better team than the Texans are. So it's in Jacksonville, but Duval County, but I'll still take the Lions. I just think that the Jaguars have been really bad. They've been the team people predicted them to be going into the season, tanking for Trevor, and their defense has been horrible. And the Stafford, Galladay, Hawkinson show going to have more than enough to put up points on this bad defense. And that kind of tandem they got. This is one of the few defenses that will make the Lions' run game look really solid. So taking the Lions in that one. That's tier 1 bet. So didn't explain it. Tier 1 bets are things I'm recommending, things I'm betting more heavily. I also do tier 2 bets, which are more probably fun bets, games I just kind of I'm interested in and feel like I want to take a side in, but not ones I'm going to go crazy after because I can see why it might not go in my favor. And then I'm also going to hit the avoids. And these are games where I don't feel good about either side of it, and I'm just going to stay away from it altogether. And most of the time, those are pretty uninteresting teams anyway. So second tier 1 bet I have is Ravens at Eagles. So the Ravens are minus 7.5 point favorites into this one. They were last week. They dominated a Bengals team that doesn't have a lot of talent at most positions, especially on their offensive line. And the Eagles actually played unexpectedly well last week, considering just their offensive. They have so many injuries. Their defense is not. Their defense has played okay, especially on the line, but their defense is nothing special. But they played pretty well against the Steelers last week. Gave them a run for their money for most of the game. Ultimately, the Steelers, just raw talent on offense, were able to win out. But uh, they were able to move the ball some, but I just don't see that happening this week against the Ravens. I think the Ravens are back on their freight train mode after a hiccup along the way against the Chiefs, and I expect them to run all over, especially on defense, just to swarm and crush Carson Wentz. And I don't see any reason to believe that the Eagles defense will be able to stop Lamar Jackson and the offense that they have going. So I I'm not going to think that much about it. I'm going to take the Ravens minus 7.5 and keep moving on. Next game I got is Jets at Dolphins. So this one is another spread that I think is a little perplexing. So the Dolphins were +8 underdogs go against San Fran this last week, and then just walloped them. A lot of that was the 49ers just having a bad week, but the Dolphins are not like they keep getting treated like a bad team, and I just don't think the Dolphins are that bad. They have a really underrated defense, and their duo at corner with Xavier Howard and Byron Jones sneakily might be one of the better cornerback duos in the in anyone's secondary this year. So I think their coach, what is name escapes me, but they have a solid coach. They've been kind of outperforming their talent last year. This year, I think they've been putting together some solid performances. Offense, especially this last week, seemed to be clicking more than it has been. So I think they'll be able to move the ball on this terrible Jets team that's getting blown out by double digits every week. And we don't even know the Jets just released Le'Veon Bell, and we don't even know if Darnold's back or if it's going to be the Joe Flacco experience again. So not really understanding this. The Jets just got crushed by the Cardinals, who were minus 7-point favorites. I think the Dolphins are a better team than the Cardinals, and they give them one more point. So, Vegas is usually right, but I'm just not seeing it. I'm going to take the Dolphins minus the 8 and feel pretty comfortable with that. A couple more Tier 1 bets. So, in a similar fashion, the Dolphins, I feel like, are being treated like a pretty bad team, but the Buccaneers keep getting treated like an elite team. And Vegas, they're playing the betting public. They're not necessarily playing the realistic odds, but Packers at Buccaneers this week. Packers are minus 1.5-point favorites, and I just don't understand that at all. The Packers are playing. People are saying, "Oh, the Seahawks look like the best team in football right now." Not really. The Pack didn't play this week, but the Packers have looked like the best team in football easily. They've been without Devontae Adams for a couple of weeks now, and they didn't miss a beat. They keep putting up dominant performances. Now they found this tight end who's Robert Tonyan, who's just becoming a touchdown monster with Aaron Rodgers throwing in the ball, and I'm expecting them to get Devontae Adams back coming off the bye. So and potentially Kenny Clark, who is a solid nose tackle for them, who makes their defense more formidable than it always was. So I just don't get it. After watching the Bucs on Thursday night just put up a sloppy performance, and I'm not expecting Chris Godwin back, so they're still a pretty nicked up, banged up team. I just don't understand how they're the spread's that close. I'm going to take the Packers. I'm going to hammer the Packers. I think from what we've seen so far, Packers minus 1.5. It's kind of disrespectful, which it hurts to say because I'm not a Packers fan by any means. I hate them. I'm a Vikings fan, but I try to call it like I see it. I try to understand where my biases are, and man, I'm taking the Packers. Next game I got that is a Tier 1 bet is Cardinals at Cowboys. So right now the Cowboys are +2.5 underdogs at home. And yeah, they did just lose Dak Prescott with a kind of a nasty ankle injury, but Andy Dalton's not terrible. I know the Cowboys' offensive line is down two of their tackles, and their center retired. They're not the offensive line of days past, and their defense is trash. So, I mean, maybe this should be a tier two bet, but because it's a home game and because the Cowboys are the ones who get the points, I made it a tier one bet just because I just think Dalton's a solid passer. He's gonna be able to manage the football. He's got great weapons uh, in that Dallas offense, which has been called very well. And I'm going to expect them to ride Zeke, and I don't really think the Cardinals are going to be able to stop that. I don't think they're particularly good on defense. They just lost their best defensive player in Chandler Jones with a bicep injury. And the Cardinals just aren't that good. I mean, maybe people are got big egos again on the Cardinals after stomping on the Jets, and we can feel cool about the Cliff Kingsbury offense again for a week, but they're just not that good of a team. They just really haven't shown it whenever they face decent opponents, and I'll take the Cowboys, to fight through this adversity right here, and I'll take them at home, and I'll take the points. I think they can still get it done even with Andy Dalton at quarterback. So that wraps up my tier one bets. Jumping on to tier two bets. These are games. I got three games here. These are games I like. Just kind of want to have some action in it, but I can see it either way. First one I got is Browns at Steelers. So I missed this in my recap video. The Browns and the Colts game was one of the more games I was anticipating going into this past weekend. And I mean, the Browns showed up and the Colts didn't. The Browns, I think I was expecting that. I kind of hedged a little bit in prior videos that the Colts defense is not what it was being advertised at the time. They had played against some sorry opponents, and it made their defense look like unstoppable, and really isn't. And the Browns, they got a good offense with that Kevin Stefanski's running with Kareem Hunt now leading the charge. I mean, they've looked good. They've looked exciting, but I don't know if Baker's really looked that good. I don't know if Odell Beckham's really looked that good, other than a few plays where he's popped off. I mean, that was a game I was wrong about, the Colts Browns. The Browns kind of put more evidence behind them being a really solid football team, particularly on offense, and the Colts not kind of middle of the road team, good team, not great team, but don't have enough going on offense. We'll talk about more about them later, but I just want to talk quickly about that game as I talk about the Browns here because they look exciting. And as I said earlier, the Steelers' defense against the Eagles, they've made plays. They got talented players, but for whatever reason, they've been allowing points. They allowed plenty of points to the Eagles this past week, and they've allowed points in their other matchups. So the Steelers' offense has had to play really well to win these games, getting off to this 4-0 start they got. And I mean, ultimately, I like the Steelers still. Steelers at home, -3.5 points. I'm going to take the Steelers side. This is an exciting division game. I want to be in on it. But that's why it's a tier two bet. Like the Browns, I think their defense is still pretty suspect. I think the Steelers' offense is going to be able to move the ball plenty against them. But I think the Browns' offense can be pretty formidable, especially with that running attack. But I'm just gonna side with the Steelers' defensive personnel winning that battle enough to give the Steelers the edge here. But that should be a fun game, fun division game. But Big Ben eats the Browns alive, so I shouldn't be as worried as I am. But I don't know, that'll be fun. Another game I probably shouldn't be as worried about as I am is Falcons at Vikings. So right now the Vikings are -3.5 point favorites. And the Falcons just have been really bad. I mean, in the first couple weeks, they showed that their offense can be really good, and we know that Matty Ice can throw the ball, especially when he's got his great weapons on the field, but his great weapons haven't been on the field that much. I mean, I think Julio is still in question for this game. Who knows if he'll be back? Hayden Hurst is a guy their tight end that they traded for, is a guy I liked in fantasy. He hasn't really panned out the way people expected. So it's really just like Calvin Ridley and a washed up Todd Gurley in that offense, and it's kind of come back down to earth. I mean, they just fired Dan Quinn. Maybe they get the rebound performance like we saw with the Texans, where they fire a head coach and then they go on and win a game. But I'm not seeing it this week with the Falcons. I mean, the Vikings are still pretty suspect. I think Mike Zimmer was able to dial up a pretty solid defensive plan against Russell Wilson and the Seahawks. They ran the ball, controlled the clock for the majority of the game, and were pretty competitive up in Seattle, where they normally aren't. Ended up losing right at the end. Yeah, I'm still not over that, but the Falcons are not a team that have Russell Wilson at quarterback and where I expect them to be able to do that. I think the Vikings, with or without Dalvin Cook, I'm not expecting Dalvin Cook. Alexander Madison, still plenty capable. Vikings, I expect, should be able to run the ball in this matchup. Just exert their will on a Falcons defense that isn't very good, control the clock, and do enough on defense where they should be able to cover this minus 3.5 points. I mean, they're the better team. They should win this game. Fingers crossed. Bengals at Colts. So this is my last tier 2 bet. I've been kind of on the fence with this one. I mean, the Bengals kind of burned me last week. Definitely looked, pretty bad against that Baltimore defense. And I mean, we've known it all along that the Bengals offensive line can't protect Joe Burrow. And the Colts defense, although they were exposed a little bit against the Browns, their defensive line is pretty good still. And, with DeForest Buckner and things they got going on the Colts defensive line, they should be able to really get after Joe Burrow. Ultimately, though, where I've settled on this game is the Colts. The Colts right now have the number 1 kicker in fantasy, and that is because their offense with Phil Rivers just hasn't been that good. I mean, the Bengals defense is not particularly good, so there's a chance the Colts are just able to run all over this Bengals defense and blow them out. But I just don't think the Colts offense, they really just haven't been putting up the kind of points where I'm comfortable taking them to win by 8 points. I'm sorry if I didn't say that, but the Bengals are +8 underdogs, Colts 8-point favorites. And I just don't think the Colts, this sputtering offense that they've thrown out on the field, is enough where you should feel comfortable taking the Colts and ceding 8 points. So I still like the Colts to win this game over the stretch of the 4 quarters. I think the Colts will win, but 8 points is quite a bit. And I mean, Joe Burrow and being able to use his weapons. I mean, I think he's going to have a rough time. Hopefully he doesn't get hurt or anything, but I just like them being able to score enough to cover that 8 points. So I still have the Colts winning, but I have the Bengals covering that. We'll see what happens. I mean, there's a chance, like I said, the Colts run all over them, but right now I think there's plenty of reason to believe, or plenty of reason to doubt the Colts right now. And then my avoids. So right now, this is another one I kind of waffled on. Rams at 49ers. Rams are minus 3-point favorites. And just the way these two teams looked, I don't know, with the 49ers this past week, looking pretty awful against the Dolphins. Meanwhile, the Rams beat up on... Who did they beat up on? Washington team, I think. But the Rams just haven't really been that consistent. They beat up on the Washington team because Alex Smith played and Aaron Donald jumped on his back for a little bit and people were scared. But, I mean, the Washington team isn't good. I just think the Rams have been pretty inconsistent. I think they're a hard team to trust right now. The 49ers have looked rough the last couple weeks. The injuries kind of caught up with them, but, 2 weeks ago, Kittle had a monster game. They ended up losing, but I don't know. It's a division game. Rams have been inconsistent. The 49ers, with Raheem Mostert back, I think there's a chance that they can run the ball and with Kittle, convert on some crucial third downs. And, I think getting too confident in the Rams right now would be a mistake. So I'm not going to touch this one. I just think the 49ers got enough in the tank where they could bounce out and be very good in this game. Not so much after this last performance, not so much that I feel confident in taking their side of it. I think I'd rather just stay away from this matchup and keep my money out of it. In a similar fashion, Bears at Panthers. I'll say it again. The Panthers have definitely outperformed what I expected, especially with the kind of the talent they have. Especially if you would have told me, Christian McCaffrey would get hurt early in the season and they would continue to play this well. I mean, no one would have believed it. I wouldn't have believed it, but I mean, so far they look like a well-coached team, and they're definitely outperforming their talent. But the Bears have played well enough to stay in games. You know, they're 4-1. Got to hand it to them. I mean, I think they're good enough that they'll be able to hang in this game. The Panthers' defense is not something to be scared of. I think this is probably going to be a pretty close game, and I kind of give the Bears the edge. Not so much that I want to bet on them. Plus 2.5. Bears are plus 2.5 underdogs going into Panthers, and that's ultimately like I kind of thought the Bears should have been favored in this one. So seeing that the Panthers were favored, I guess I sort of get it. It's not a team I've really been watching that closely, but I don't know. I just think the Bears defense is gonna be able to cause some trouble. Khalil Mack, one of the league's best disruptors. I know he hasn't got that many sacks, but I mean he's a great player. He's gonna cause chaos. Um, and I just think offensive wise they'll be able to hang in this one enough to make it pretty uneasy. One I'm going to keep my money out of. Last avoid I have Washington at Giants. Right now the Giants are minus 3-point favorites. I mean I guess they're the home team. Ultimately, I mean these are two bad NFC East teams. I have no interest in this game. I'm just going to stay away from it. I don't want to try to pick and hyperanalyze which of these dog shit teams are going to come out with the victory. And then 3 more games that are currently off the board. We got Bills at Chiefs. This is a Monday afternoon game. Man, after watching this Bills performance this last night and with the Chiefs performance this past week against, getting upset by the Raiders, there's not a line that I've seen out in this game because the Bills just played as I'm recording this, but I guess it'll be interesting to see. It's probably a game I'm just going to avoid just because both these teams kind of perform below my expectations of them, and I kind of need a reset. Need to see what these teams do this week. That should be an interesting shootout. I mean, if the points are close, I mean, I'll take the Chiefs, but I guess we'll have to see where it lays. Two other games that are off the board right now. We got Broncos at Pats. A lot of uncertainty in this game. Probably not going to touch it unless it's a ridiculous spread. I think Drew Lock may be coming back. Patriots, who knows if Cam's playing. But I would expect Stephon Gilmore and Cam back. Probably give the Patriots the edge. We'll have to see where the line eventually settles in Foxborough. But a lot of uncertainty there. Probably not going to touch it regardless. And the last game, Texans at Titans. So this one's off the board right now because the Titans just played. The Titans had a really solid performance, like I said earlier. So hard to doubt them. I ultimately have to see where this line settles. If it's close at all, I would take the Titans. But we'll have to see. It's a division game. Texans might be carrying some momentum forward. Deshaun Watson, always a dangerous quarterback to bet against. So it might be a game I avoid. I guess we'll just have to see where that line is. Check me out on Twitter at Favorite Fade. I will be, I kind of update throughout the week. I don't know. Whatever I find interesting, injuries, different angles on games, changes in my thinking. This is probably the only video I'm putting up this week. So if you want any updates, definitely check out my Twitter, and I'll probably be commenting on those lines I just mentioned as they come out. Anyway, didn't have the greatest week this last week of betting, but let's get after it this next week. Good luck to you guys.